Today we're going to refinish and install window shutters. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Let's get to it. As you can see, the window shutters are very dull from years of being exposed to the sun, and they're bowing out because it's missing some screws. Because of those missing screws in the summertime, they start to bow out. If your shutters don't have visible screws, you should be able to just pull them out either by hand or with a pry bar like I'm doing here. And you can see it just comes off. If they have screws like the ones here, you can go ahead and just remove the screws and remove the shutter. Once you figure out how you're going to remove those window shutters, the very first thing you want to do is go ahead and set a staging area. This is where we're going to put the shutters. We're going to lay them down, we're going to clean them, we're going to paint them, and we're going to take it from there. So it's important that you have some kind of a tarp and a staging area. So the shutters that I have here weren't installed correctly. They're missing some screws, but they do have screws, so that's what I'm doing. With the drill gun, I'm just removing those screws and I'm removing each shutter. And of course, the bottom windows, to remove those shutters is very easy. It becomes more difficult once you get to the upper windows, but I'll show you some tricks that I've learned throughout this that's going to make things easier. And you can see here how my window shutters are bowing out, and that's because the installers originally didn't put 2 screws in the middle. So it's very important that you have screws on top, in the middle, and on the bottom. So you can see the screws that I have removed from these window shutters. It's not the same color, and the head doesn't look good once installed on the shutter. So here we have a flat head screw, and this is what I'm going to be using. We're going to put 6 screws in all. These are 3-inch screws, and I do have a link in the description. Once you do take down your window shutters, the very important thing to do here is make sure you clean them. Clean them throughout. Don't just hose them down. You have to clean them with a wet rag because they have like a powdery substance on them from being there a long time, from the sun beating on that plastic. Go ahead and clean it as best as you can like I'm doing here. Don't just hose it down. The next thing to do is choose your color and make sure you get something that has a paint and primer. I also highly recommend that you get this trigger handle, and this is going to make you have more control when you spray that paint like I'm doing here. When it comes to spraying the paint, you want to go ahead and make sure that you go with the grain. So you can see I'm going side to side, and then what I'm actually going to do is once I'm done here with the middle, I'm going to go up and down on the sides. So always go with the direction of the grain. And this trigger handle really helps you in order to achieve that, give you more control. And after 1 coat, there's already a big difference. So as mentioned before, you're going to need about 3 coats per window shutter. Again, make sure that you go with the grain. When you paint this, go with the grain. This spray paint dries fairly quickly, so you don't have to wait too long between coats. Notice that I use some rocks on top of the tarp to keep that tarp down, because sometimes you get a gust of wind and it folds that tarp on top of the window shutter, and you don't want that. So make sure you put some weight on the tarp. Once you've finished painting that window shutter, let it sit there and let it dry before you install it. Now you can see here on the vinyl siding I have some holes from the previous screws and previous clips. So I'm going to go ahead and use this silicone, this white silicone on some of these holes. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and do this just to make sure that water doesn't get underneath the vinyl and then cause a problem in the long run. I just go ahead and apply some silicone, and then with a wet rag, I'm going to go ahead and remove it and clean it off. And I'm going to do this for all the holes that are there that I'm not going to use. So now it's time to go ahead and hang up that shutter. And again, the lower windows, it's very easy to do. As you can see, I'm just putting that window shutter up against the siding, and then I'm just going to go ahead and put the screws. So I'm putting 2 screws on top, 2 in the middle, and then 2 on the bottom. And it's very important that you put those screws in the middle, because if you don't, the shutter will bow out like this one is doing here at the top. It's just going to go ahead and bow out in the summertime with the heat, and it's going to flex out like that. And while we're doing this, it's amazing to look at the difference between your faded old shutters, and then once you repaint them, how much better they look, and they're going to accent the house that much more and make things look a lot better. So it's really worth the effort and the work to get this to look this good. So what I started doing afterwards as well is I went ahead and put the screws on the shutters. So instead of bringing the shutter, putting it up against the vinyl, the screws are already screwed into the shutter halfway, and then I did the rest once I put it up against the vinyl, and that really made things better, especially once you have to do the windows on the upper levels. Here you can see me putting the screws on the shutters, and this is going to be a time saver, and it's going to help you with those windows on those upper levels, as I've mentioned before. But this is something that's going to tremendously help, and it also helps on the lower levels. As you can see, now all I have to do is put that shutter up against the vinyl siding and then just screw it in. I don't have to worry about the screws falling on the ground, and it helps. So that's one thing you should consider. Go ahead and pre-drill your screws into the shutter, bring it up to the window itself, and go ahead and screw it in. As you can see, I clean each shutter by hand, and that's very important that you get rid of any dust on the window so the paint can grab. So this is why it's important to have weight on top of the tarp, because once the wind picks up and you're painting that shutter, it's going to go ahead and fold the tarp over the shutter, and you don't want that to happen. So make sure you have some weight there holding that tarp down. On the upper level windows, it can get a little bit tricky. You want to make sure that you have somebody helping you out, that your ladder is nice and secure. So be careful, take your time, and the process for the windows on the upper levels is the same one as the bottom levels. So just take your time, do it right, and you're going to have good results. I actually started to do the octagon window just to match the black on all my windows, so that's a little extra while I had the ladder out that I wanted to do, and I think it looks very good, and it matches the look of the other windows. So here you can see what one of the shutters looked like before. It was faded, it was beat up, and then afterwards, going through the process, it looks much better, it's vivid, and it brings out the window, and it just complements the house. So I think it's really worth the effort. I'm confident if you follow these instructions, you will have good results. Thanks for watching, leave a comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.